Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 318 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Einlon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I got involved in karate as a youngster, and when it came time for my own children to get involved in extracurricular activities, of course, I signed up both of my kids at a local karate dojo as well. And it did wonders for their confidence, their agility, and even respect and empathy for other people. And I've often wondered how these teachings would play out on a college campus, for example, especially as we try to teach bystander intervention and empathy to the students. So we are about to find out much more. Elicia Ybarra is proud to announce Pretty Hands, Hard Punches, a self-defense curriculum that's tailored to the physical and mental dangers that women face in society today. After 25 years in martial arts and experiencing firsthand the struggles with physical and emotional abuse, she has decided to help other women learn how to defend themselves. She has worked with experts in Hapkido, TaeKwon-Do, and Jiu-jitsu to develop a unique program to teach women to fight back. She believes that every woman has the right to choose to defend herself. In combination with physical self-defense, Elicia is working with experts in women's rights to offer a comprehensive approach to violence prevention by utilizing boundary-setting skills and other strategies to stop an assault before it becomes physical. Welcome to the show, Elicia.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
Hey, listen, the pleasure is all mine. I am just fascinated by what it is that you're doing and how we could potentially help college students today, especially as we try to tackle this issue of sexual assaults on college campuses. And, I think it's probably helpful to our listening audience to kind of go back to the beginning to understand where this love of martial arts came from. And you actually started your martial arts career at age 3 after watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, one of my favorite shows growing up. Tell us about your love of martial arts as you were growing up.
Okay, so it all started when I have two older brothers. One is 11 years older and the other one is 4. And both of them had Ninja Turtles in their room. And when I was around 3, my grandma bought me a Barbie bedroom set. And I was very tomboyish and I threw a fit. And so my mom gave me my brother's old Ninja Turtle bedroom set. And that night, I remember laying in my Donatello blanket and being like, I'm a ninja. I'm going to be a ninja. And then it really did kind of develop into an obsession through my adolescence, into my early teens, and then into early adulthood, where I signed up. My dad, at the time, I was around 7 when I finally was able to get into an actual school. And my dad and mom set me down, explained to me what the expenses were. And I did understand that it was a lot of money, and basically told me that if I was going to commit, I had to commit to getting my black belt, and that was going to take 3 to 5 years. And so at 7, I was like, let's do this. I'm going to get my black belt. And then from then, I spent the next 13 to 14 years training every single day, multiple hours a day, being on the demo team, running demo teams, teaching martial arts, doing competitions in the Taekwondo arena. And then on top of that, I also taught like private lessons to other students to help them achieve their goals in martial arts. But the entire time, my goal was to open my own martial arts school, to be the head of the school as a grandmaster. And so I followed that dream all the way up until I was about 21. And then, like it does so often for 21-year-olds, everything came crashing down. And that was when I really found myself into where I was trying to find something different. I had spent all of my life running in martial arts. And because martial arts is a lifestyle, I continued to train all the way up until today. I've never really stopped. I've always just kind of taken a break. Yeah. But throughout my whole life, martial arts has been a love.
Yeah. One of the things that I notice because, I hang out at the dojo with my kids, watch them practice, the whole thing. If we look at the statistics, 64% of martial arts are practiced by men and 80% of the instructors are male. So I'm just curious from your perspective, why do you think we have a lack of inclusivity today in this arena? Why aren't we seeing more female instructors?
I think it's slowly starting to become a little bit more, but I think there's several factors. First, I really would like to point out that in the United States, the target market for martial arts is young children. It's under 11.
Mhm.
And under 11, the stats are a lot different. It's actually 52% boys practicing and 48% girls. So in my opinion, right, as girls hit that prepubescent and puberty, it becomes less acceptable in societal terms to be in such a masculine sport. It becomes unattractive to maybe boys that you're dating in high school, right? Like it becomes a big commitment. Unlike other sports, Taekwondo, martial arts, it's like 3 to 5 days a week. It's every day. There's no off season. And I think as young women turn into young adults, their time starts to be taken up with other expectations, other wants, and other needs. So unless you're very serious about trying to have it a career, it's a lot harder to maintain it as a priority in your life. And then to kind of exasperate that, the target market's children and men. So it's not really convenient for women and grown women to train, because most of the times are when they're at home cooking dinner, they're taking care of the kids, they're the primary caregiver, and there's not really options for them because traditionally martial arts is militant, so it's for being able to maim and kill your opponent. It's created for men. There really was no inclusivity for women or the LGBTQ plus community, because when it was created in a life or death situation. And although it's been watered down as we've brought it to the Western countries in order to make it marketable, I think that those traditional roles of male and female still become very prominent as children grow and those expectations become more of them. And for women, in my experience, it's not feminine to break boards with your hands, or to go to school with a black eye because you were competing, or to walk on crutches because you sprained your ankle at a tournament, or to tell your boyfriend you can't go to his birthday because you have a competition. Like, those are all things that really, when I was a teenager, they weren't really accepted. It was more of like, this is what expected of you in society, and you are to become a young lady. And being a martial artist, sometimes you don't come across as a young lady. If that kind of answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely does. I can see how societal pressures might steer somebody out of it if you are a female and trying to conform with what most people would think or expect. Now, along those lines, I mean, sexual assaults are in the news right now on college campuses, but only 1 in 3 women report the sexual assault, according to the World Health Organization. And 70% of these assaults are actually done by a spouse or an intimate partner. So this is somebody that you already know. It kind of flies in the face of, this myth that somehow it's somebody, some mysterious stranger that like hops out, from behind a bush or something like that. Most of the time, it's somebody you already know in your life. So talk to our audience a little bit about how martial arts has helped you personally.
So this is a little bit of a loaded question, but essentially martial arts helped me throughout my whole life. From the time I remember fighting back to my first bully, I was 7 years old. He grabbed me by my very long brown hair, yanked me off of the merry-go-round, threw me in the dirt, and told me it was his turn. And I beat the crap out of him. So his mom called the police, and I got escorted home by a police officer at 7 for beating up this older boy. And as I grew and I continued to do martial arts and practice, my confidence, as you had mentioned earlier, it began to skyrocket, which is a blessing and a curse, because at that age, at 15, 16 years old, I could absolutely handle myself with a boy my age. Absolutely. I was not going to be peer pressured. I was not going to do anything I didn't want to do. However, what I wasn't taught was how to handle grown men. What I wasn't taught is how to handle somebody that I'm interested in as a 16-year-old girl, and he's a 23-year-old man, and he's giving me this attention. Those are the things that I'm bringing up in my program because it made me very vulnerable. I had no idea about things like coercion, manipulation, isolation from your family. And so when I found myself in my early 20s very lost as my entire career had imploded, I found myself in an abusive relationship. Even with all the martial arts training, even as a professional martial arts instructor that had spent several years training in various martial arts, I found myself with this man who decided he was going to beat me when I didn't do things. And because he knew I could fight back, he would use things like drugs and alcohol to get me incoherent. And then he would beat me until I was unconscious, because that was his way of controlling me. And at that time, I was in my early 20s. I had no idea that this was even possible. I had such confidence in my ability to physically defend. I had no idea that somebody could mentally and emotionally abuse me that way. And so martial arts saved my life. It saved my life the night that he decided he was going to choke me and kill me because I had caught him cheating on me and I had told him it was over. It saved my life when my muscle memory jumped in and I was able to break his nose and get out of the chokehold that he was holding me up in. And at this time, again, I had spent 17 years in martial arts. I was mean. Nobody messed with me, right? But this man, he had come into my life as my walking Prince Charming. And the way that he did that was through manipulation. It was through slowly degrading my boundaries and isolating me from anybody that could have told me, hey, this isn't okay. And by the time it was the end of it, he had so much control that I had no car, I had no phone, I was living in his house, I had no job. And my only goal in life was like not to get beat by this guy. So although it saved my life when I finally fought back, right? It saved my life. However, up until that point, he was able to manipulate me, abuse me, and I had no idea how to handle the situation. And I think a lot of young people nowadays, they don't know how to handle the manipulation, the coercion, the societal pressures to be a good girl, to be a good wife, to be a good girlfriend, right? Those are pressures that as young women, I was never aware of. I had a dream to open my own martial arts school, not to get married. That wasn't part of it, right? But as I got older, it was become like, well, that's what your job is as a woman. It's to get married and have children. It's not to run a school. So I had no value at that point. My entire identity had been tied up as a martial arts instructor, and then it had kind of morphed into what I needed to be in this abusive man as his spouse. And up until that point, I hadn't understood my self-worth enough to actually fight back. And that's one of the things that I want to bring forth and forthcoming in my program is that, like, sure, you can physically fight back. You can physically defend yourself, but why don't we stop it before you get to the point where you have to fight back? Right? Why don't we stop it when you see the way that he handles his anger or she handles her anger? Because, as much as we talk about statistics for sexual assault on women, I do want to point out that it is also prominent in men. Men in society are not allowed to talk about it at all. I mean, they're just considered not a man, which is absolutely ridiculous. So, I mean, the way that it has helped me is it not only saved my life to get out of this very abusive relationship, but I also had instilled the perseverance and the strength to pull myself out of the gutter, to go back and get a job, to apologize to people that I had hurt while I was in this horrible relationship, right? To eat crow, as I say, and, say, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up, and then to build my life from there. And all of that, I very much attribute to martial arts.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that story. Unbelievable. And you mentioned when like he was choking you, and obviously at that point it had gotten very physical. But how can martial arts stop an assault before it becomes physical?
I think that's the other form of martial arts that we don't talk about, which is mental. Right. And what I base my program off of is something called the empowerment self-defense model that many, many great women decades ago came up with. This isn't anything new. And what it talks about teaching young women, because that's normally who the victim is how to recognize those signs of abusive behavior and how to build and gain your self-confidence in order to say no. No, I don't want to go up those stairs. No, I'm not comfortable drinking more. No, I don't want to have sex with you, right? Saying no and then trusting your intuition when something feels off. Because as a society, we are taught not to trust our intuition. If that guy's being a little creepy, you're taught to be nice to him because you're supposed to be a nice person as a female, right? And in empowerment, self-defense, and this model, what we teach is you need to watch out for your boundaries. It's okay to be polite, but if this person starts invading your boundaries, let me walk you through step by step how you can handle this situation. And in that, that is what I believe is going to stop these assaults before they happen, by teaching the people that are the victims how to recognize the abusive behaviors, because those are patterns.
For sure, for sure. Now, if we talk about college students as a whole, most people on a college campus don't have your experience level in martial arts or anywhere close to it. Okay, these are beginners, like with no experience whatsoever in their life. So can you give us an example of an effective martial arts technique that you can actually teach a beginner who has never had any martial arts experience in their life before?
Yes, yes. The one thing about martial arts, right, is when you see it, you see a lot of the fancy kicking and punching, but the things that are really effective are the very basic techniques. When I fought back against my abuser that night, real quick, the reason I fought back, right, because up until this point I hadn't, was because he kicked my dog. So it had nothing to do with my own self-worth. I fought back because I heard my little Chiweenie yelp. And I lost it, right? Something in my head clicked. And when I did that, it was my muscle memory. It wasn't some fancy butterfly kick that I used to break boards with. It was a palm strike. It was this part of my hand, right? That bottom part, and I broke his nose. And then as he was dropping me, I yanked on his Adam's apple. And then then the martial arts started to kick in, right? Because that's all basic. That's all stuff that anybody can do. Then I roundhouse kicked him and I fractured 2 of his ribs. And when I did that, that's more of martial arts. But before that, right, when he was choking me in my neck, one of the things I could have done that I didn't even think of at the time was if you actually straighten your hand into a flat hand like this, and you press directly into that jugular notch as hard as you can, he's gonna let you go because he's not gonna be able to breathe. And that will give you a moment to breathe and think about what your next step is. So your hand goes completely flat, your fingertips are stiff, and you just jam it as hard as you can into the jugular notch, which is right between the clavicle bones. Right here in that little opening, it's about a little triangle. If that kind of understands, I don't know if it'll come across through the podcast as much as seeing me do it on camera, but yeah, that was something I could have used and I didn't even think of it.
Wow. Obviously very effective techniques. I mean, if you can't breathe, there's no way you're going to be able to hold somebody up. I mean, that's just not happening. I talk about sexual assault prevention on college campuses, and just what I'm nervous about is that somehow by having this discussion, are we framing sexual assault as a women's problem, that somehow you could have stopped it if you knew these martial arts techniques? Because the problem that I have ultimately is that really the only person responsible for a sexual assault is the perpetrator. It's not, that person who, is being impacted. It's the perpetrator. So, I mean, so what are your thoughts on that?
First, I absolutely agree with you. I think that in society, we tend to so easily blame the victim because it's so much easier to shut the victim up than hold the perpetrator accountable. Right. So, yes. And I think that for people, it is much easier to be like, oh, well, they're just, she's talking about self-defense. And so, and it's a women's self-defense program, so it must only be women. But actually, my program is all-inclusive specifically for this reason, because sexual assault is not about being a girl or a boy or non-binary. Sexual assault is about power and control, and they don't discriminate in that. The only real difference I see is that it's a little bit more socially acceptable for women to come forward because other women will empathize with them and understand, because almost every woman has a story. Now, for men and people of the LGBTQ plus community, when they come forward, there's a different stigma to that. men are, immediately talked down on. You lose less of, what some would call their value, because, a man should never let that happen to them, that type of thinking. And really what I think is that we need to frame this as an epidemic, and it's everyone's problem. Every single person that we know has a story. And as I continue to start this program and talk to more and more women, men, and members of the LGBTQ+, what I found really was that everyone had a story. Everyone had some type of story. And so I think what we really need to be looking at when it comes to how we frame is just keeping the conversation open and believing the victim.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Now, I mean, to kind of move to the next step here, I mean, in your opinion, how do we change the culture on college campuses? Because I understand that somebody like you, who's well trained in martial arts, you are much less likely to be attacked. Okay. But then the perpetrator in that case is going to just move on to somebody else who doesn't have the martial arts training that you have. So, how are we going to protect everyone somehow?
I mean, first, we start by holding the perpetrators accountable. And we start doing that by believing the victims and investigating. I mean, it's my personal opinion that anytime there's anything to do with sexual assault, it should be immediately be a police matter. I personally don't think universities should be involved in the investigation unless it's in a cooperation role. I think that immediately it needs to be investigated as if the victim is telling the truth, and let the evidence follow you from there. Because most of the time, right, if somebody, especially on a college campus, if somebody is attacking girls or women on a college campus, they've probably done it more than once. It's normally not a one time. As a matter of fact, I just found the statistic for 2022 that an average rapist will rape 300 women in his lifetime. So if we held him accountable at victim 1, 2, or 3, even victim 15, I mean, we're still potentially saving hundreds of victims. So we can't go to everybody and teach them martial arts, but we can teach them to be open to your friend that's talking to you and believe her or him when they say it, and help them have the strength to take action and hold these people accountable. And on the flip side, universities and police stations, right, there needs to be severe consequences. You lose your degree, you lose your scholarship, you go to jail, right? Because this is against the law. Like, it is illegal to rape people, and it's never the victim's fault. It doesn't matter what she was wearing. So if we just opened the conversation and started believing these victims and investigating, we would be able to take the perpetrators off the streets. Mm-hmm. And that's how you stop it.
I like
in my opinion, I should say.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think it starts by believing the victim, and then number 2, the accountability, which we haven't had in the courts. I mean, there's just too many cases where they basically get a slap on the wrist because, hey, it's a young person and we don't want to ruin his life for the rest of, his career, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, you committed something that's against the law. I mean, the law is what the law is. And we have to have accountability. I mean, otherwise this isn't going to end. So I appreciate your point of view there. Now, listen, we both agree that self-defense is a very good thing. And, one of our speakers talks about, this fight or flight mentality where essentially people freeze in the moment. It's a very common response. So what happens if we freeze and we're unable to speak or move or kick or punch?
So I want to set, I kind of want to say this very upfront. I did freeze. Mm-hmm. The first time my ex-boyfriend ever choked me out, the only reason he got off of me was because there was a friend there who threw him off of me. So in that time, I can honestly tell you what I was feeling. I was looking up at this man that I loved while he was choking me unconscious and telling me what a horrible person I was. And my body wasn't doing what I was telling it to do. My body was like, no. And it was the scariest, absolute scariest moment of my life. And even though I left that night, I ran 2 miles home in the dead of winter in Modesto to my hometown, to my family's home. Nobody was there, cried myself to sleep, woke up and convinced myself the next day it didn't happen, because the idea that this man that loved me would do this to me was just too hard for me to comprehend. And so I went back. And then it became the self-blame. Then it was the shame. I have this ability. I'm mean. I'm a black belt. I'm an instructor. How did I let this happen to me? And I spent 10 years feeling that guilt and shame. Although I moved on with my life, I went and got a college degree. I married my husband. I had a baby. There was always this, how did I let myself get into this situation? So the thing that I would like to say to any young person listening is that if your body freezes, that is not your fault. That is you surviving the situation and your body and your mind not understanding how to happen. Now, the second time I froze was when my dog got kicked. And that time, again, like I said, it was muscle memory when I fought back. It was really this switch that clicked. But again, I had felt that fear of like, it was pure hate in his eyes. He hated me. He wanted me to die. He was telling me that if he couldn't have me, nobody was going to have me and nobody would even care. He wouldn't even go to jail. And I would like, I would like to also say that when the police showed up, right, because the police got called, they took one look at me and my black belts on the wall and one look at him on the ground bleeding out his nose and told me if I pressed charges, I was going to jail. So I had bruises. Both of my eyes were black. I had bruises all down my chest and my arms where he had thrown me by my hair down the hallway and then where he had started to choke me up against the wall. And before they even asked me what happened, I said I wanted to press charges and they looked me dead in the eye and told me, if you press charges, you're going to jail because he's going to go to the hospital and you're a black belt. So I would like to just let people know that if your body does that, that's a traumatic response. It's not your fault. Don't feel shame. Don't feel regret. Don't feel anything to do with you because it's not your responsibility that somebody else decided to hurt you. That's what I would like to say on freezing.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I think that's really, really important. And, hope and healing is possible. There are plenty of people who are listeners to our show that I know themselves, they are survivors of sexual assault. And I guess I'm just wondering the other side of it, right? Do you find that many women you work with use martial arts as a form of healing?
Absolutely. Every single one that I've talked to that has trained in martial arts, especially people that are survivors of trauma and abuse. I mean, there's an entire network, the National Women's Martial Arts Federation, that is of women that have used martial arts as a way to heal and gain control of their body back from these traumatic experiences that they had experienced. And there's actually a podcast that I listened to called the Fight Back Podcast. And it's all about these women that are doing exactly what I'm doing, which is trying to create a program that's tailored for women, that helps women with their problems. And with that, there is a confidence that's built. There is a healing that is done in that because you're gaining control over something that you previously felt that you didn't have any control over. So martial arts is absolutely an amazing way to help yourself heal from any trauma.
Wow, this has been a really enlightening interview, and I know I didn't give you, very easy topics to talk about here. I know it was difficult. Okay, I know that these are hard. I asked the hard questions because I think the audience, these are the questions that the audience would want to hear, and these are the concerns they would have, and I think this has just been really, really enlightening. I learned a lot in this interview. I always do, but you don't shy away from the tough conversations. You were very open and honest about some of the things that have happened to you, as difficult as that must be for you to talk about like this in public. So I just want to say kudos to you for, just tackling all of this and being open and honest about it, because I think you're helping other people with your words today. And so I just want to say thank you for you just being open and honest about everything that you've been through. I mean, the story is just incredible. And so, I guess, I'm kind of curious, because I do like really good food, and I know that, I was able to meet your husband, and I know that you guys probably enjoy some good food every now and then on the West Coast. Where do you guys go in town for a great meal?
We like to, when he goes to his school, we like to go to, I had it written down. It's a steak bar. Where is it? I know it's here. Okay, it is the Bai Plu Thai and Sushi Bar. I knew I was going to mess it up if I didn't write it down, but they have amazing sushi in Long Beach, and I definitely recommend that anybody go there.
Yeah, Long Beach is the place you want to go to get some really good sushi. See, I'm stuck in Nashville, Tennessee, and there are no water, there's no ocean. I mean, we are landlocked as landlocked can be. So anytime I order sushi, I'm like, all right, how long has this been on land? Is
It's
it
like a
really?
risk.
It's a
It's
total
a risk
risk.
assessment.
Yeah, I mean, it's like going to a gas station in Long Beach and ordering sushi. You're like, all right, how safe is that? Am I going to be sick for like a week after I eat that? So anyway, so I'm jealous of the great sushi that you have out there, and I'm a big Thai food fan. Anything spicy, I am down. So I'm definitely going to check it out next time I am in Long Beach. I think that is fantastic. Now, if our listeners, after this incredible interview, if they are interested in learning more about Pretty Hands, Hard Punches, where should they go to get more information from you?
So I haven't launched yet. I plan on launching by the end of the week. But any of the social medias I will have up at Pretty Hands Hard Punches. And if you would like to get in direct contact with me, you can email me at prettyhandshardpunches@gmail.com. So for right now, if you want to get in touch with me right now, just email me. But after the end of this week, I will have some of my social media started and my content up.
Fantastic. It's at Pretty Hands Hard Punches, or use the Gmail and contact Elicia, and she will get you plugged into some of the things that she's going to be working on. This has been absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much, Elicia, for coming on the show. Thank you for answering the hard questions. I know it's not easy, so that's incredible. And what can I say? All the best for your new adventure here. I hope that it is incredibly successful. I know that it will be with you at the helm because you are just a force of nature. And so much respect to you and everything that you're going to do in order to help people moving forward. So thank you so much for the time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you too. This was amazing. This was an amazing first appearance.
Yeah, it couldn't go any better than that. So it is perfect. And to our listening audience, if you really enjoyed this talk with Elicia, as I know that you do enjoy this program, please like it. Please share it with other people on your college campus so that way they can hear Alicia's answers to these really, really difficult questions. And hopefully you got a lot out of it. And we hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we're going to see you next time.